You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
We have procrastinated podcasting this week for a bunch of different reasons, right? You just got back from Florida. You had a fun trip. Shout out to Florida and your friend Janelle and all the fun things that you did in Florida.
It was so much fun. If you follow us on Instagram, you also probably saw a silly story of us just having a blast.
Tell us about the manatees. I know it's not like a big, long story, but it's cool.
We were on our way to a beach and we're just cruising along and happened to, out of the corner of our eye, catch a small sign that said something like manatee watch point or something. We're like, what? So we flip around and go check it out. And there's this little cove where they just naturally migrate to. And they hang out and it's like their safe little sanctuary. And there were so many of them.
Yeah, it's so cool.
They don't know why they come there. They just kind of come and hang out and have their safe little space to people watch.
It
was beautiful. It was really cool.
I don't think I've ever, I'm trying to think if I've ever seen one even like at, the zoo or SeaWorld or something like that. I don't think I've ever seen a manatee before.
I don't think I had either. I definitely know I haven't seen one in the wild, but I don't think I had seen one. I'm trying to rack my brain, but I don't think so. And they were so cool. Yeah. They were so cool. They were like, there were so many of them.
Did they look more like sills or more like whales?
They had little sill faces. Mm-hmm. They look like little, when they pop their little nose up, they almost look like hippopotamuses.
Oh, yeah?
Hippopotamuses. They were just so cute with their little nose. And then they had their big old tail, their big old whale tail that was actually more rounded like a, you heard like a mermaid or a beaver. So they had these like tails that schmack. And they were just super cute. They were big old, their little noses would pop up. It was just really, really cute. And then there was a baby. And we about lost it when we saw a little baby manatee. That's some cuteness.
Surprised you didn't jump in and try to swim with
Janelle wanted to. Yeah, they seemed so, it was like a really gentle energy. Like, I don't know. I think they're as gentle as they felt, but it felt like if you did, like, please don't do it. Like, don't go harass the manatees.
Or film it and then send it.
But it felt like, maybe I'm one of those people that walks up in Yellowstone and thinks I can pet this buffalo. It'll be fine.
Right.
Obviously we didn't, but it felt like calm. Like if you were in the water, you would be okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but it felt really calm and really cool.
Well, they've got like that whole thing where there's no recorded, in like throughout history, there has never been a recorded incident of like a killer whale.
Yeah.
Killing a human in the wild.
In the wild. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Tells you something.
I know. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, this is not that episode.
But you should definitely give some love to the manatees.
Are manatees mammals? They're mammals, right?
They're mammals, I believe, yeah. Because they have to breathe.
Right.
They have to surface, and they surface every like 2 to 15 minutes.
They feed the babies milk and every 2 to 15 minutes.
Yes, I read the signs.
Oh, okay.
I was like, this is fascinating. Let's learn.
Tests while you were there.
Me and my time watch. Janelle was bored. I'm like, I've got to figure this out. I need an average. No, they had a little sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was your first time in the Atlantic Ocean.
It was my first time.
Right.
Yeah. So I heart the Atlantic.
You had your...
I am one with the Atlantic. I love the Atlantic. I want to move right next to her and play in her every day.
So we have I can't say that word.
We have procrastinated
this episode of the podcast, recording it both because we have been busy, but then I don't know if it's obvious. It's probably obvious to people that listen to every episode or listen to a lot of our episodes, but we are on our own healing journey all the time. Yeah. We are consistently in the process of growth and evolution and healing. A lot of what we talk about on the podcast stems from exactly that, right? It stems from our own lived experience of the healing journey that we've been not just under since we've met and kind of going through since we met, but also over the course of our entire life. And so we share a lot of it on the podcast. A lot of the topics that we discuss stem from it, but they also come from like topics from working with other people and our coaching practice and all these other kind of things. But the episode today it's twofold. It comes from a place, let's see how over-explaining I can get in order to kind of avoid the topic. I'm really uncomfortable about it too. Like the more that we have.
Should I just say it?
Yeah.
Do you want me to take the lead?
Go ahead.
We're going to talk about self-sabotage.
I don't know if that was clear enough. Say it again. Because it sounded like
I say it with pizzazz.
pizzazz.
With pizzazz.
Okay, pizzazz it up again. Let's hear it.
We are going to talk about self-sabotage. Self-sabotage. And all the ways that you do it, that you have done it, that you ignore the fact that you're currently doing it.
Craig saw a reel, and the reel was something along the lines of, we self-sabotage because we can then control the outcome. So if we're facing something, or if we're experiencing something in life that is scary, that is different, that is hard, that we really don't know what's going to happen, right? There's this big unknown about just anything in general, and we'll get into it. But the idea is, in order to control the outcome, you will self-sabotage because you then have control over what happens. You know what's going to happen because you're going to blow it all up. You're going to destroy, you're going to self-sabotage, you're going to create circumstances that lead to X, Y, and Z, right? So the idea is that you continually keep yourself stuck in patterns and routines in a unhealthy way because you are afraid of the unknown of what might happen, right?
Yeah, that's what you had said when you said that's because that's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, like that's the familiarity. It's not the stretch into the unknown, which would be the growth. So you self-sabotage because that's what's familiar. And then you are staying in your comfort zone, even though it feels incredibly tumultuous.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's painful. It causes all these problems. And you're like, why am I doing this? But inside your body, all those, your nervous system knows how to handle incredibly uncomfortable, painful, why am I doing this? All of that stuff. It's familiar with that, as opposed to the unknown, which is what happens when you let yourself grow and evolve and get out of your own way. And you're like, what the hell is going to happen next? I don't know.
So I really resonated with it just from that perspective and from like that take on why do we self-sabotage. And I'm sure that there's lots of other ones, right? There's plenty of reasons why we do it. And when I say we, I'm talking about metaphorically all of us, right? There's lots of reasons why a person would self-sabotage. We're going to focus today on this kind of concept that we're doing it because we're afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
And the unknown is the thing that we aren't prepared for. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't have confidence in ourselves. We don't trust it. So that's where we're going to be coming from.
I have another thought on that too.
Let's hear it.
It's not only the unknown, but it's where somebody told us we couldn't and we believed them. Like, that's too big. That's not realistic. You have to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Or only you have to be born into it to get this. Only the lucky, like you weren't born into that life. You weren't born with this talent. You weren't born, like, just the ways that those little, which creates the familiarity of where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's kind of not apropos. What's the word that I'm looking for? It's kind of spot on for where we're at right now in our life, because we're on the precipice of a big change.
Yes.
And there's big unknowns that are taking place in our life right now. And a certain amount of that we just have to be okay with. And that's the part that we're like, I don't know if I'm okay with all the fear and the anxiety that's coming up around what if, right? Because we're growing and expanding both in our relationship, our own individual healing, and then our business. Like, all three of those things, I feel like at this point in our life are on, like, legitimately, like, they all feel like they're on the precipice of this next big thing. And it feels, when I say life changing, it feels like another life is trying to be manifested, be created. Like, it's trying to come out through the ethers of time in order to exist in this reality so that we can start living it. But in order to do that, we have to face all these fears and all these anxieties and all these programs that we've had up until this point that shaped like the last 40 years of our life. And now we're confronting all of those programs, all of those stories that we have about ourselves. And in order to shift into the new, whatever we want to call it, right? The new vibration, the new dynamic, the new life, the new experience, the new growth, we have to face all of it.
Yeah.
And we both, and correct me if I'm wrong, by all means, please, babe.
You are wrong.
But we both have a history of self-sabotaging at times in our lives when change and growth was happening and or potential, right?
Yeah.
So we have a big growth moment that we're experiencing right now. And it feels like there's a part of us that is like in full self-sabotage mode.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you feel that way?
Yes. My common go-to self-sabotage tactic is complete dissociation, complete like lethargy, frozen. Like I just shut down. That's my biggest self-sabotage is I can't accomplish the tiniest thing.
Yeah.
I just kind of
Stop
run
doing
out of
everything.
juice, run out of everything.
Do you want to speak more to it a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, what does it feel like? Because it's because when you say it, like what comes to mind, obviously I have the lived experience of being with you through those phases, right? I do the same thing.
Like I watch you just tank the fuck out and do nothing.
But it's kind of a fascinating thing that happens because it like literally just becomes everything stops.
Right.
Where it's like, it's not just like, oh, we're not, doing the thing that we want to be doing right now in life. It's like, I'm not even like, I'll stop. Like, I feel like we talk about brushing teeth a lot on this podcast for some reason, but I'll stop like all things.
Yeah.
I'll stop caring for myself. I'll stop like doing anything.
Yeah.
It just becomes one disassociated experience after another of zoning out.
I have awareness like mine, like that's what it falls into. But the process starts before the dissociation does. The process for my self-sabotage starts with the momentum. And you're like, what?
Yeah, what do you mean?
I get an idea, I get a spark, right? This new thing that's going to take us to the next level, or here's this next level of growth, or here's this thing. I get it in my head that once I see that and get excited, I have to make it way bigger than it is. And I also have to accomplish all these other things that I've had great ideas for my list of almosts that need to be accomplished first before that. So when I take this thing that is literally like, why don't I just put my energy and effort right there and start walking towards that? Sometimes I do, but usually it's like, well, I've got to do this first. And if I'm going to do this, I actually have to learn this, which means I have to finish this course, this. I make it this impossible list before I can even take the first step. And then I'm overwhelmed and everything starts shutting down because I blow it up with taking on way too much and telling myself I'm not allowed to do this until I do all of these other things. Or if it's something that's really happy, that I don't deserve it because I chose this instead of all these other things. So it happens before the dissociation. That's kind of cool to like have that awareness. The dissociation isn't my self-sabotage. That's just have tanked myself out, my making it bigger and giving me an impossible stack of what must be done and at what level it must be done. That nobody could beat that. Nobody could make that list. Nobody could do that. I sure shit couldn't. And I know that, which is why I do it.
Do you have an understanding of like, are you willing to dive into that a little bit more?
I feel like I just really expressed it. I don't understand. Are you trying to make it bigger than
No, I'm trying to get us to the point of like, because it's kind of like what we were talking about leading up to this, where I want to talk about this from like our lived experience of it. And I think you just outlined a really good way that you do it today. Mm-hmm. And it's probably the behavior that has developed over the course of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But what would be the roots of that type of behavior?
What would be the roots of that?
Like, where does
I
that
haven't-
kind of stem from, in a sense, where that's going to be your, maybe not necessarily your go-to, but a really consistent way that you will self-sabotage is, here's the spark of the idea that I want to do, this creativity, this thing, this inspiration comes to me.
Mm-hmm.
But before I will allow myself to do this thing, I have to do all of these other things, and all of it becomes too big and too overwhelming. And then I don't accomplish anything because I tank myself out.
Okay.
So like, what would be the roots of that type of behavior?
Let's see how far back I can go, because I have some obvious ones, but it's usually farther back than the obvious. But I have to start with the obvious and trace it backwards. So it might be a long journey. I haven't sat with this one fully, so I'm not sure yet. And I might not be able to get there just on the podcast because it's a new one. Let's see. Obvious ones are the first surface level is getting excited about doing something, right? Even getting excited like as a young kid. And you can't do that until you do all these other things, which is like also discipline, right? Which I suck at as well. So discipline feels like stagnation and control and confinement. So I'm working on building a healthy relationship with self-discipline, but self-discipline is very much punish because I would punish myself so much.
Yeah.
Also learn behavior. Let's see, stay on topic. So having to do all these other things, having it like pointed out that it's selfish, that I'm taking away from others if I do that, having it told to me like, well, your mother wanted to do this, but we had to do this and this for you. And because we did this, you didn't get that, or she didn't get this. So those are big ones, right? Those will do it. What is happening over there?
I am so sorry, Steph.
It's very distracting. It's okay, Gene. Take your time.
I'm such an asshole.
You're
I'm
not an
like,
asshole.
hey, really go into this right now. And then immediately I'm like, let's fuck around with the rug underneath the table.
Why don't you figure it out? Just do it.
What we need to do is get a bigger rug.
We do need a bigger rug.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if I can drop back in. Boy, it's kind of hard to drop in.
Are you worthy of the big thing?
Oh, no. It's not. It's more than not even being like worthy. It's also not allowed to outshine. Like somebody else definitely had to be
the spotlight.
Spotlight, very much. And in the event that you succeeded, then that person would make sure that it somehow got turned back to them, either in a, well, I did this, or like, then they I can't even think of the word.
Like really take credit for it.
Well, not take credit for it, but they're like, well, I'm just garbage. I guess I don't do anything. So then you have to turn around and be like, oh, you're so great. And so you weren't even allowed to like succeed in things. I feel like I'm just like, I mean, obviously these are big deals.
Yeah.
But I know that those are what's covering it up. You know, did they influence it and play a role and continue? Yes, but I don't feel like I've actually hit the core.
Yeah.
Because it's very good. Like that might be scary when I see that. It's going to be scary when I see that because everything, like my body's trying to
deflect and protect.
It's like it feels like you're a target. Like, but this is like succeeding. It's not just about self-sabotage, because you're stopping yourself from succeeding.
Yeah.
And there's like another layer is when you're succeeding at something, it doesn't mean that you're succeeding at it every single time, every single day, every single moment. It's a progression. Some days you kick ass and some days you don't. But it really feels like whenever you succeed, that's your new bar. and you cannot, which you may have done everything in your power and worked your ass off to barely like boom to get over that bar. And so you use all that energy and all of that like oomph to get there. And now that's the bar. How are you going to continue to hit that bar when it took everything to get there? You have to allow for the flow. You have to allow for the under and the over and the under and the over and the natural cycles. But it feels like that is now my bare minimum. And anything less is absolute failure, is worthless, is like now I've wasted my time. I've wasted everybody else's time. And like all the ways that it's like, see, you couldn't do it. Told you couldn't do it. And then when you go over it, it's like, see, that's where you're supposed to be at. That's what you're supposed to do. So that's exhausting, right? You can't be 100% of the time. You just burn out. Your 100% sometimes looks like 20%.
Yeah.
Your 100% sometimes looks like 200%, you know? There's a flow of it. But if I achieve that, then that has to be, I can never do less than that really, really hard thing that seems impossible. Like, I'm going to keep the bar in a comfortable space. You're like, I like bring it back to brush my teeth. I brushed my teeth today. Woohoo. But you still don't even celebrate that because you tank yourself for not doing enough. I still don't have the origin though.
I don't know if I have that dynamic. I don't feel like I have some expectation to meet. So if I achieve or if I, do you know what I'm trying to see if that one clicks for me? I don't think it does. I think a lot of my self-sabotaging is just coming from fear, where it's like, oh heavens. I don't know if it's necessarily fear either. I think that's a component of it. I think it's a lot of the story that I have around just myself, and like when it comes to success and when it comes to my value and my worth, and when it comes to like, okay, let's see here, because now I feel like I'm getting more
right.
more clarity as I kind of explore this idea, because I've always had this is interesting. I've always had what felt like a realistic view of my capabilities or my potential. And that view feels like very high. Like I have a very, I don't want to say a high expectation for myself, but I'm really struggling right now. I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this. I feel like I have there's two parts of me. There's a part of me that feels like I can succeed and do anything. And I feel like I have a really high bar that I set for myself, but not in like, if I don't meet it, I'm going to fail. I just feel like I can do anything. And that I'm going to eventually figure it out. And it's going to be amazing. Like I'm going to have an amazing life. I'm going to live this beautiful, amazing life that I'm really excited about. And it's just literally a matter of time. It's just going to happen. So I have a really high expectation for what my life is going to look like. But then it's countered immediately by like this internal voice of that's being cocky, that's grand. Like,
who do you think you are?
Yeah, like it's this whole idea of I'm pretending and I'm living some sort of fantasy make-believe life that's inside of my head, that's a dream and a fantasy, and it's not based in reality, and you need to just come back to reality. Because here in reality, where real people live and where adults live, this is what life actually looks like. So you're going to need to actually bring it down a few notches and actually start, just like hurry up and give up already, because you're just wasting time.
Adult. Yes.
Right? You're just wasting time pretending. Quit pretending and just start actually doing what you need to do to be an adult and live this life.
Yep.
And it feels to me like I'm like the pretending part is the real part for me. I'm like, I'm not pretending. Like I really believe that I can do this thing. And everybody has been telling me that I can't for a really, really long time. And I've held on to this thing inside. It's like, no, I can. It's just a matter of time. But I don't know if that's even true. That only feels like a part of it. because I feel like because I do feel like I self-sabotage a lot. Like I feel like I'm still actively doing it today, where it's like, I mean, even just recording this episode, right? I've been very resistant to it. I'm still resistant to it. I don't feel comfortable right now sitting down trying to talk and have this conversation. And I don't know if that's because of the subject matter or because of whatever, right? There's
pick one.
Exactly. We've got a whole laundry list of reasons why we might not want to be recording an episode right now.
Including the laundry. I have to get that done. Meant to start that this morning. It's like, what, 5?
So I don't know. I don't know for sure what's the core of it for me, or what it stems from. I know that there's like the obvious things when it comes to like worth and value, where I have even though I might feel like I have this daydreamer energy inside of me, where I believe that great, amazing things are going to happen for me in my life, I still believe like I don't know if I guess it's that I don't, like, I'm so hesitant to say like it's because I believe I'm not worthy of those things. Like, I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
That feels like a massive defeat.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like I just give up if I say I'm not worthy of that life that I imagine I'm worthy of, or that I'm going to manifest and create or something, right? And then, but I think that there's plenty of parts of me that don't think I'm worthy of it. There's plenty parts of me that think that the life that I am living right now is basically it. Like, this is what you've accomplished with your 42 years on the planet, and this is kind of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this can't be all that it is. And then it also has the other dynamics too, where it's like, this is a pretty great life.
Right?
Like, I'm looking at our life and I'm thinking, you know,
we're living the impossible dream.
Yeah.
But we never like sit in the achievements. We always continually move the bar. So it's always, but we're not here. When we stop for a second and look and be like, wow, like where we are now is like that's that bar I'm talking about. Where we are now was this of like, oh my gosh, this one day, then we're here, and now it's the bar. We're telling ourselves it's the bare minimum, because this is where we should be. Instead of being like, wow, look at all that we've actually accomplished. We're like, we should be here. This is doing nothing. We're doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
How many times do I say that throughout the day, where I'm like, we are just maintaining at the bare minimum right now. We're barely keeping this ship afloat.
And we do that. We keep doing that. We keep recreating this feeling. Even though we're like, we're not doing it like we used to. So that's why this healing is a journey. We're not doing it like we used to. If we really sit and look back of all the ways that we self-sabotage and hurt our bodies and ourselves and our partners and everything, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And look at ways that we really make sure that things are fucked so we aren't growing. We're not doing that. We are continually working on our healing, and we are continually growing, and we are doing a good job when we look at it that way. And we are still recreating, because this part hasn't been healed yet. We are still recreating the same sensations and feelings of barely getting by, of barely like any of this.
Just barely keeping our head above water.
Just keeping our head above water, because we know how to, that's our familiar.
Yeah.
That's our comfortable. So even though we're like, fuck this, we're done with this, our bodies are like, then why you keep making it so?
Yeah. Why do we?
Because we know how to do that. When we start to bust out, which we do and we keep doing, and we've done, like our evolution, if you put it on a bar graph or like on a line graph, we're going up. We're going up. We are. But we're somehow like, we're staying, at this. We can't cross this one.
I think that's just what it feels like we're doing. I don't feel like we're actually probably doing that. I think we're probably just consistently going up. It just feels like we're staying stagnant at this level. Yeah, because it's self-sabotage.
It's like this one that we can't bust out of is this feeling like we're not doing enough in our heads, or like we're just barely from completely sinking, even though we're literally not blowing up our lives anymore. Even though we're literally making healthy choices for our bodies, for ourselves, for our relationship, for our kids. We are literally changing, like we have changed everything. And we're still like, yeah, but clearly we're fucking it all up. Clearly
So
we're not doing enough.
is it just simply a perspective shift? Like, is it simple enough of, I mean, obviously a perspective shift is never simple, right? It involves a lot of reprogramming
Right.
of the neural pathways inside of your brain that shaped that perspective. But
Mhm.
is that all that it is? Is it just a perspective shift where we're not really self-sabotaging? This is just what healing looks like?
Maybe. I feel like we are self-sabotaging in a way that we keep trying to stop it. Even though we're growing, we're still creating, I don't know.
Like we're putting up roadblocks.
We're
to
definitely putting
restrict
up
our
roadblocks.
Our growth.
Because what happens when somebody removes one of those roadblocks or a roadblock comes down? What's the first thought? For me, okay, for me, I'm not like, well, yay, here I go. I'm like, fuck, now I have to do it. I don't have the excuses that I couldn't because this and this and this. I have to actually step forward and do it. And that's scary and hard, and I don't know what I'm doing. And so either I do it and I'm like, whew, there's my new bare minimum. Anything less than that is, or I find another roadblock to put on it and be like, man, I was going to do it, but then this, you know, that's.
I think about that all the time where I feel like I'm just continually putting roadblocks up.
Yeah.
Like nobody else is doing it at this point, right? We don't have any external sources, and maybe we never had external sources, right? Maybe that was always just I mean, definitely had some external sources influence in our lives at some point, but I think now it's like I'll use this for an example, and it's the silliest example, and it might not really apply, but we've been talking about putting like a patio area in our backyard,
Right.
just building a nice little spot where we have a place where we could have a little fire and hang out, so then we could spend some time outside in nature and connect and blah blah blah, right? And all the things that I've put in between that becoming a reality, like there's multiple roadblocks that I have placed. I have, right?
Yeah.
Nobody else has. Like the city hasn't come by and been like, nope, you can't do that.
Right.
You're not gonna be able to build that on your property. Like nobody has told me anything, but I have put a ton of roadblocks in between me and that thing happening.
Is it all the things that you have to do before you can do this?
That's some of them.
Yeah.
It's a lot of excuses of why I can't do that yet, right? The same thing, right? Where it's like, well, you know, that would be like a day project, maybe 2 days. Maybe I could have done that this weekend, but I can't do that until I do all of these other things that I need to do.
This, and this.
Right. We can't spend money on trying to go buy some pavers and some stone and whatnot and gravel and, you know, everything that we would need to level out the ground and do everything that we need to do, right? Which isn't a lot. We can't do that until we pay for this thing or pay for that thing.
Yeah.
And it's like the simple act of just creating an outdoor living space where we could spend some time in nature and connect and have a fireplace is going to have like an immediate effect on our lives. Like it's immediately just going to go, oh,
Right.
this was so worth it. This feels so good. Even if we use it fucking once, right? Because that's the other thing I'll put in there. We're like, we're only going to use it once and we're going to use it. It's going to be a waste of time and money. And I'm like, how stupid. All of those things are stupid. All of those reasons, all of those excuses, all of those roadblocks are dumb. And I'm the person that has placed them there. And this little example that I've used, you could apply that same process, that same mentality, that same experience across the board, right? With everything, where it's like there's a version of me that I keep trying to step in and become, a version of me that I keep trying to like own and be and exist as. And the thing that's in between me and that version is all of these little roadblocks that I've placed where I can't become that until I do this. Or once I do this, then I can become that. And again, it's all self-imposed because truthfully, like, I don't know if it's as much as like, if I become that version, then it's like the bar has been raised and I have to maintain that level. It might be. I mean, I think a really big part of what a lot of this boils down to also is like, I don't know how to fucking do any of this.
Right. It feels like imposter syndrome.
Right.
Right.
It feels like I'm trying to figure out how to do all of this stuff with a very limited skill set, all on my own. without any help to get to there. And I know that I have help, and I mean, all of those things that like are applicable, where I'm not trying to navigate life by myself anymore, but it still feels like it sometimes, and it still feels unachievable.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't really know. I feel like I'm just blowing smoke.
Right. Everything you've actually accomplished, you feel like you faked your way through and you didn't really.
Yeah.
It's not really. And
yeah.
you're like, well, I didn't really deserve that.
How can that be the case though, right?
Right.
It can't be.
Right.
Because we've both accomplished so many things in our life. And
so why do we
all
think
of it feel like we've just been faking it?
Like everything, every time I have, like I'm a certificate collector. Like I feel like once I get this certificate, or I've done this class or this thing and I've achieved this, then I'll be ready to do all this. But I can't really do all this until I've got this class. And then I do this class, and I do really well in these classes. I do really well. Like that was the thing. I used to think I was a terrible test taker. In school, I was. Out of school, all of a sudden, I'm a great test taker, and it always shocks the hell out of me. And I always kick my ass if it's not 100%. If it's not 100%, I'm felt like, what the fuck? I was like F's in school. Like I didn't go to school for a big part. I had to like everything I could to get a diploma was like winging a prayer of like going back. But like it has to be 100%. It's 98, 96, whatever. And I think I feel bad because I didn't get that. So I feel less than. And then I think, how did I even get this? How did I get like even just like pass with work stuff? I feel like I didn't really learn anything. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know how I passed that test because I don't really know what I'm doing here. I get this certificate for this course. I don't know how I got that. I just faked my way through it. I really don't know. And I get such anxiety with that when I get like direct questions, I usually freeze because I feel like I'm such a failure and such a fraud. So it's that imposter syndrome. Like you can accomplish all these things, which we have.
Yeah.
And I still think, oh, I didn't really deserve that. I didn't really deserve that. I didn't really do that. I don't know how it's there. And I can't do it because, I somehow didn't go through the program the way that I thought I was going to go through the program. So therefore I feel like I didn't really go through it. Like, this is how I'm going to go through it. I'm going to read this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to study this time every day. And anything less than that, I was like, oh, I just like was winging it. So I didn't really earn it. Does that sound familiar? Like what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, maybe not.
No. I was kind of just doing my best to listen to you and your experience of it.
I was speaking like to you. I mean, of course it was my own experience. I'm like, I can relate. This is why I can relate. That's what it feels like for you. But yeah, I thought. So tell me more about what.
I think a lot of what it's coming down to for me is it's just this, and it's funny because it's so simple, right? It's always, I try to overcomplicate everything. You give me a job to do and I'm going to make it really, really complicated.
I can see it when you're overcomplicating it, but not when I do it.
Yeah. You don't ever do it, babe. You're super simple. You never overcomplicate things.
You heard it here, folks.
You should see us try to plan something together. Hey, we're going to run to the store. Hold on a minute. We need to come up with as many reasons why this isn't going to happen today. Really, I just got to go get a loaf of bread. I don't think so. If you do that. Anyways, I think that
I don't even want to come in the house with like multiple trips with groceries.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be like
it's all or nothing. I'm a complete waste of a human if I can't carry all 46 grocery sacks at the same time. I think a lot of this is just coming down to my self-worth and the value that I have and how I feel about myself and how I see myself. Because like we said earlier, right, we are living this really beautiful life that, and I don't want to say nobody else is responsible for it because obviously the list of people that helped us get to this point in our life is very long. And we are 100% responsible for the life that we have today. Mm-hmm. Like we created this life knowingly, subconsciously. Like there's nobody else to quote unquote, Like, we're not going to go give the trophy to somebody else for the life that we're living.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, we can look and see our life as this really beautiful thing, and then we go give the trophy to somebody else. No, like, they didn't do it. We did it. And then we're like, well, here's the trophy. Well, that's not ours. We don't fucking deserve that trophy. Have you seen our shit show of a life? Right? And then
we expect perfection.
Is that what it is?
That's the bar that we hold ourselves to. And this is the bar that so many people, like, they keep pitting up against. Because the level of perfection that we have set for ourselves is not the level of perfection that we expect from others. Sometimes, right? Of course, that happens sometimes where we're like, how dare you be a human and make a mistake?
I would definitely like both of my parents to be perfect. And I'm very upset that they aren't.
Okay. Well, in general, right? In general, somebody makes a mistake and they're talking about a way that they like feel like they failed here. And it's like, we can see the success. We can see how good they're doing. We can see but for us, we hold this bar, and people, I think, do that in general. They're like, I can understand everybody else not getting 100 on everything. I can understand that, but why didn't I? I should have. I'm not enough because I did this. Like, this is the only way that I really will get love is if I'm perfect. And then on top of that, if I am perfect, then I take the spotlight away from this person, which means then I won't get it because now I've taken away from them and now they're going to hate me. So it's like, well, like that's mine. That's my shit just came out. I think we figured out mine. There's the core. A little bit more on that. But yeah, we expect nothing less than perfection and growth 100% of the time.
Which obviously is unrealistic.
It's completely unrealistic.
Right.
And we don't always do that either. There's times we're like, we're having a down day. And that's fine. There are times we do really well at allowing the ebb and flow in life, which is why I think we've accomplished so much.
Yeah.
And then there's times when we're like, we should be here. This is what we should be doing. We should be able to help this much. We should be doing this. We should be reaching here. We should be able to offer this. We should be here. We shouldn't have hard days. Why are we dealing with this thing again? So it's just that whole, I don't know.
No, you're right. You're right on it. And it's frustrating. Like, the truth of it is, it's like I get so tired of, it's what you and I talk about all the time, is it's like these patterns that keep repeating are continuing to happen, even though we have clarity and understanding of why they happen. And it's like, I would really appreciate it if those things would just stop happening. Right. But like, I can hear there's parts of me that are like, oh, they'll stop happening once you stop participating.
Right.
They're like, if you don't want that, it's like complaining about the party that you're at.
Instead of just leaving.
Yeah. It's like, man, every time I come here, it's the same old shit. This party sucks. I hate this party every time I come here.
They do this every time.
Every single time.
I always feel like this.
Right. And then it's like, what are you doing here? What do you mean? What am I doing here? You can leave. No, I can't. If I leave, then they're going to do, and then they're going to do, and then they're going to do that. And so it's the same thing where it's like, I'm just complaining about self-induced issues that I continually recreate and then get upset because I'm experiencing the fallout of the choices that I've made or lack of. I think a big one, for me is discipline. It's like what you talked about earlier too, where it's like, I have such opposition to the idea that somebody is going to tell me what to do. Yeah. And I mean, I can remember being really little in elementary school, like first, second, third grade or something. Like, I remember going to the principal's office and just being like dedicated to dying right there in that moment before I was going to do anything that woman told me to do, right? The principal wasn't going to tell me what to do. I was just never going to give in. And the opposition that I have to other people offering up any sort of advice or help or insight or, God forbid, punishment or discipline. Yeah. And that's a big issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that I've had to really kind of face and deal with. And I still am facing and dealing with that today. Like right now, I'm sure you can think of some experiences in our life in the not too distant past where this comes out and Craig gets very oppositional.
I'm not jumping on that ship right now.
When it comes to somebody offering up some alternatives to what he should or shouldn't be doing. And I think the reason I'm that that is a protective mechanism that little Craig had to implement in order to feel safe in environments where he not only didn't feel safe, but wasn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I had a lot of environments growing up where I wasn't safe, and there was nothing I could do about it other than just create like a shield of safety to hide behind that was essentially just a big fuck you. Right.
Yeah.
Like it didn't matter what it was. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do. Well, here's the consequences. And I'm like, sucks to be you, because I'm not doing what you want me to do. And I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have to live my life that way anymore. And now the only person that I am, when I say I'm accountable to, I don't mean that like, because obviously I'm accountable to you, to our children, like, do you know what I mean? I'm showing up in life in a sense, and I'm accountable to people. So that's not the way that I'm using the word, but in essence, nobody's making me do anything.
Yeah, you're choosing.
Right? Nobody's forcing me to do anything at this point in my life. Not a single person. Right? Obviously, you know that, right? You've tried plenty of times to say, hey, maybe you should do this. Do you want to say that again? Maybe that's not going to happen. And now it's just me. But even me, I'm like, hey, maybe you should do this thing. And I'm like, fuck you, Craig.
Don't tell me what to do.
Right? And I'm like, well, maybe that's a good thing. You should probably do that thing. You actually like doing that thing. And I'm like, do I though? Do I really like doing that thing? I think that's what it boils down to a lot for me. It's just that opposition to not just taking advice and recommendation and doing things that are beneficial for me, but it's that concept and idea around like discipline. In order to achieve the things that we want to achieve, we have to be disciplined to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And like the disciplined acts now aren't like, I have to sit down and do schoolwork, or I have to do my homework, or I have to do my chores, or it's more of like, I need to be loving to myself. I need to do the things that like fuel me in a positive way. I need to be disciplined about the things that I put into my body. I need to be disciplined about my sleep. I need to be disciplined about, I've been thinking a lot too lately about the people that I interact with and the people that I'm choosing to spend time with. And in the spaces, like I saw this other thing the other day too, right? Where it was like, I'm not speaking about, this was just a realism that I saw. And it was somebody that was like, I'm tired of always having to be like the bigger person, right? I'm always having to do this thing where I have to be the bigger person in interactions with people. And somebody was like, maybe you should stop hanging out with such little people, right? And it's not obviously like a little person. That's not the term, or that's not the reference, but it's like,
you can choose who you're hanging out with.
Exactly. Like if you always have to choose the higher road, stop hanging out on the lower fucking road with people that are down there.
Choose people that meet you on the high road, or meet you on a completely different.
Yeah. And I've thought about that too, because we had a complete shift, right? We moved to Tennessee and we get a completely like new set of people in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally it's just bam.
Yeah.
New people in our life, brand new, complete strangers. And I'm like, I want to start being more conscious about who I'm spending time with.
Yeah.
Because I've never actively thought about it in that way. It's always just like, those are the people, because that's what life is, right? Those are the people that I'm, do you know what I mean? But I can pick and choose. I have a choice how I interact and choose who I interact with. And I don't think I've ever felt that way before necessarily. So there's lots that go into this, but now I kind of feel like I'm rambling. What stands out to you? What's coming
You're
up for
allowed
you?
to ramble.
I know, but
I think what's standing out is I'm like realizing with this conversation that while I have a pattern of self-sabotage, I've pattern interrupted those continuously. And I'm sitting here with this like awareness of how I'm doing it right now. But like, we wouldn't be where we are now if all we did was self-sabotage. We wouldn't be here. It'd be impossible to be here where we are now. So I'm like looking at all the ways that I didn't self-sabotage and getting curious about like, I know what to do to not self-sabotage. I know what to do. You know what to do. I know what I need to do in order to succeed. I know what I need to do in order to not self-sabotage. So why do I keep doing it, right? It's because of these wounds. It's because of these patterns that are here. It's not just because it's the cyclical nature of things, which is a part of it, but I'm still working on these really deep wounds. And I've healed a lot, which is why I'm able to be here. But it's like the dissociation part when it was like, this is how I self-sabotage. And it's like, oh, actually it's before that this happens. And so instead of worrying about what I can do to stop self-sabotaging right now, this action that'll work is just put another thing on my to, where my focus is on the things that are coming up for me, what are holding me back. It's the wound. It's the things in my life which gave me this belief system. So I'm working on the beliefs and allowing things to come to the surface and letting go of agreements that don't fit, and like really doing the shadow work, doing the inner work, and really working on healing that so these wounds don't present in a way to self-sabotage. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
So I'm not treating the surface. I'm not treating I'm going like, I don't know how to metaphoric it right now. I can barely talk. It's just like, I'm not going to put my energy on scooping the water out of the boat. I'm going to put my energy in repairing the hole.
Yeah.
And maybe even a step further of getting it out of that rocky ass water and repairing the hole. And then I'll worry about whatever water was accumulated letting out, because then it's not refilling up to take me back down.
We talk a lot about so much of the stuff that we do, both like with shadow work and working with people, and then also just our own journeys. So much of it is childhood stuff. Yeah. And it's all mining deep down into the past and inner child work and everything like that. And it seems like every time we have, because like some of our content will really pop at some point, we'll get a lot of like, there's a reel that'll get 400,000 views or something like that. And there's always people in the comments that get upset that it always comes back to childhood. Right. They're like, it doesn't always come from childhood. It doesn't always come from childhood. It doesn't always come from childhood. And I was thinking about it and I'm like, of course there's going to be lived experiences in adulthood that affect you. Of course you're going to have trauma. You're going to have experiences. You're going to go through stuff in your adult life that is going to have massive ramifications, that is going to shape and mold you, that can take like, quote unquote, the healthy person, even though that's a stupid barometer, right? But can take somebody who is living a life of prosperity and joy and happiness and everything like that, and have healthy relationships, and then something terrible happens to them and it completely shifts their trajectory, and then they have a lot to heal through and everything. Absolutely applicable. Yep. And then I realized, as I was like thinking down this train of thought, was all of those things are still heavily influenced by childhood. Yes. Because
how did you end up in this pattern?
Well, it's not even how did you end up in that pattern, right? It's not to say like, yes, there is the factor that you wouldn't be in the shitty relationship that you're in today if you didn't have some foundation of that built in your childhood. Yeah. But I'm thinking about even just like the super one-off event where somebody has a really wonderfully healthy childhood where they're loved and supported and emotionally stable. And then I'm
glad for you too. Like, can you imagine that?
It happens.
It does happen.
There's people out there. Yeah. But that person then gets in a horrific car accident, or
something,
or they're assaulted, or something terrible happens to that person, and then creates a lot of trauma that they have to recover from. They're going to be using the skill set that they have to navigate life that was built in childhood.
Yeah.
So it all always comes back to childhood, because truthfully, that's kind of what we're talking about here. We're self-sabotaging, we're doing all of these negative patterns, and we're repeating all of this stuff. And all of that stuff was formed in childhood.
Yeah.
And the idea that I think what you just got done saying was how, you're addressing the hole in the boat rather than trying to bail out the water. I think I'm trying to bypass that oftentimes and convince that I just need to be more routine and more disciplined.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's going to be the ticket for me to get out of this. And as always, it's a combination of all things, right? It's never one thing that fixes you. It's always there is no magic pill. You take the magic pill and then you still have to do work.
Right.
Like you still have to do the things in order for the magic pill to take effect properly and to do what it's supposed to do. Right.
Which is so frustrating.
It is.
Like, I'm with you on that. When you're like, I just want to take the magic pill. I do. But it doesn't exist. So
I want to think that if I'm just more disciplined, and if I wake up earlier, and then I set aside time to meditate, and all of those things are going to be incredibly beneficial and helpful.
Yes.
And I do need to do all of them. And then I also need to continually dive into the child that built the infrastructure for this life.
Yeah.
Because that's what it comes back to regardless. Don't you think? Like, I think it's so.
Well, it's like even if that doesn't apply, if they're like, that does not resonate with me, that's okay. It doesn't have to. This is for who it resonates with.
That's true.
If it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. It
okay.
does not have to. You can go find who you do resonate with. And the people that resonate with us, then there you go. Then we're here. And if we stop resonating with you and you move, do that, move on, go, follow yourself, follow your heart, follow where you go. What's beneficial for you today may not be beneficial tomorrow. What's not beneficial for you today might never be, or it might be someday. Everything doesn't have to fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't resonate, move on. Don't try and be like, why aren't you resonating for me?
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but good chances are it's not going to happen. You're just going to keep getting pissed, and that's okay. Or you can just figure out what resonates. I struggle with when something resonates so strongly and then it stops. I have a hard time releasing. I don't have a hard time trying to fit things to resonate for me and being like, you didn't say this. You didn't say this. How dare you not say this? I'm like, oh, this isn't aligning anymore. But it was so significant in my life. How do I let it go? I want it to align again. And so then I'm trying to align instead
What's
of
that
being
feeling that you're holding on to, you think? Because there's a feeling underneath the alignment. When something aligns, when I feel resonated and connected with something or with someone, even if it's just the simple thing of finding somebody you like online and you start watching their videos, and there's this guy that you turned me on to and I really like his stuff. And there's a part of me that's so afraid to continually he just came out with a podcast.
Did he?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
And
I'm I'm diving head first into that podcast. I'm so excited.
It's Patrick. What's it? I can't remember.
Anyways, well.
Yeah. Sorry, we're terrible. But I'm hesitant to dive into all of his work because I feel like that's a pattern, and I will eventually get to the point in that relationship because I'm building a relationship with a stranger online that it's one way, right? So what happens? I never thought of it that way, but that's totally what it is. Yep. Where you're we would do that. I would do that growing up too. Right. There were so many times where you'd have relationships with people that knew nothing about you. I
had a relationship with Def Leppard.
Right.
They were going to come pick me up and take me away on tour with them
and
rescue me.
I'm even thinking about just the strangers that you would see every day.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
You have a relationship with people regardless of whether or not they're in a relationship with you.
Oh, because your perspective and the way that you see it through your lens and the dynamic that it plays out. That's true. That's true. Because there's also times when it's the flipped and you have somebody who's had all these expectations of you from the relationship that they're in, and you're like, excuse me?
Right.
Please remind me your first name.
Yeah. Sorry, have we met?
Like that's
They're like, what do you mean?
right.
We've been through so much together.
So that happens a lot.
This
Wow.
thing that we're talking about, because
This isn't self-sabotage. This is just another, maybe it is. Who knows?
it's all interconnected,
right?
I think.
We're moving on, people.
Because I'm a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what it boils down to, is I have an unhealthy, and unhealthy isn't even the right term, right? It's like I have an unrealistic expectation when it comes to relationships because of how relationships were modeled for me growing up.
Okay.
So it's like, I struggle with healthy relationships, period. You know that, obviously. And then I didn't ever realize that it expands outwards to like just the simple thing of, I like this guy's content, but I don't want to consume too much of it because I don't want it to go away.
Yeah.
Because I know if I start consuming all of his stuff, I'm eventually going to hit that wall where I'm like, shut up. I'm so tired of listening to you again. Right?
Is that also like a ADHD thing too?
Probably.
To where we hyper focus.
Right.
Because I've hyper focused so many different people. And like really, the beautiful thing about that, if you look at this, is how much have you learned by all this? Like, because I've hyper focused on so many different people and so many different modalities and so many different, like, I have learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned a lot. I've been able to like learn about me, help others, like really dig in myself out of these holes and allow myself to grow. But I like the thought of happily ever after. Like that's a fairy tale. I think like it's that I believe in the love. I believe in the healthy families. I believe in all this. So it's like the letting go is hard when it's like, here's this possibility. Here's all this hope. And I want it to work. I just want it to work. I want it to continue. I want it. So when it starts shifting.
It's so interesting now that we're looking at this part of it, or what we're talking about right now, because I'm recognizing like, I want that happily ever after.
Yeah.
Like I had an idea of what my family was growing up, and it was never that.
Yeah.
But in my head, it was always that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it kind of started to come apart at the seams, I was still just like secretly pining and holding on to the image of what I was hoping that it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just, I mean, the process eventually had to do something, right? I had to eventually let some things go. But that idea that like, I will continually hold on to something thinking that it's supposed to last forever.
Yeah.
Like this guy that I love right now and his content and his, you know, the shorts that he makes and the real, all of it. I'm just like, this is such good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point it will end.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't want it to end, but it will naturally.
It will.
And I'll hold on to it for longer than I should. And then in order to protect myself from getting hurt,
mm-hmm.
with an imaginary relationship that exists only in my head, I will make him the bad guy.
Right.
Or make him less than me. So then I can justify feeling the way that I feel, which is hurt.
Right.
I just feel hurt. All of this is my childhood shit.
Yeah.
All of this is just like really sad ways that I would attach to people in a way to try to feel loved and connected. And then thought like, this is going to be the person that's going to make me feel good. This is going to be the person that's going to make me feel good. This is going to be the person that makes me feel good. I would do it with like teachers, with friends, with like, you know, eventually when I got old enough, then it was like with girlfriends and with partners and relationships, and all of it ends.
People that are listening to this right now are like, fuck.
Yeah, that's the moral of
Everything
this story.
is temporary. And also it may last your entire life. It may last your entire life, but when you die, it's going to end. If they die first, so it may last a week and not, but like everything is temporary.
Yeah.
Even if you experience it for the entirety of yours, it's temporary for somebody, so it's still temporary. But to think that you're going to experience everything for the entirety, like, it's hard because we try and hold on to. And then, I don't know, there's the flip that once that flip happens of when I see enough space, then everything just goes poof, and the disconnect that I have from that person or that thing is intense. It's immediate and it's strong, and it's just like, it's like you used to say to me, like I had a switch. That kind of makes me feel bad, but also it's what it is. You know, that switch flips and I'm like, I'm done with that. And it's impossible for me to reopen that. It's like when that is done, that is done. And it's so intense that I don't always get to go through the full process of the dissolution, the dissolving of the relationship. That happens a lot. I don't get to go through it until sometimes years later. I get so much space that I can be like, okay. And now I can look back and actually go through the stages of what happens when a relationship is no longer there. Because it just like switch flipped, done. Which I guess has been helpful, but it's also been hurtful, because when I get to that part where I can start to see what it was and go through the steps of the ending of a relationship, I would have done things differently if I wasn't so disconnected from it at the time. And so when I have to process it, it isn't just the process of the relationship ending. It's I have to process the way that I conducted myself with the ending of it. Does that make sense? It's like, well, I probably wouldn't have done that, and that if I'd have had this. But it just like, I guess that's like that avoidant part that kicks in. And it's that self-preservation. And I know where that started. Yeah. I have the core. And I've talked to you about it, so I'm not going to say it on the podcast. But yeah. I have the core memory of when I learned how to be avoidant. And it's a really fucking sad story. It's really sad. It makes my heart break for that little girl that learned that and how bad she was hurting, because I also carried that. And so I want it to work. I'm happy. I'm hopeful. I'm energetic. I'm enthusiastic.
That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm this hopeless optimistic that is just like always convinced that there's happy endings and there's magical things, and as long as we just hold on to love and hope, then everything will come out fine in the end. Yeah. And I still believe that. It just looks different than I used to think it did. Yeah.
Now it's not like that unhealthy fairy tale of immense. That's not what you're saying?
It is.
Okay.
Like, it's not that, right? It's not like, I think about us and our relationship, where what I have thought our relationship has changed over time, right? What I have wanted our relationship to be has changed, obviously, over time. But then it's also like, I think I still picture us in this fairy tale relationship where like we're going to grow old together and at some point find ourselves on some porch in rocking chairs, or do you know what I mean? Walking hand in hand somewhere, and like ideally we just lay down one night at 99 years old and say, see you when we wake up, and then we wake up somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But that
also almost made me cry. I was like, yeah, I want that. Let's do that.
But that's a fairy tale.
Maybe.
And I'm also okay with not only that being a fairy tale, but also believing in that.
Yeah.
But then I've had to like mature, I think, as an adult and recognize that that will exactly happen as long as I allow it to happen the way that it's supposed to happen. But if I try to fit it into a box.
Oh my goodness.
Like that's the part that I'm trying to, and maybe that's what
I have ruined so many things by trying to fit it into the box.
Well, that's maybe what this self-sabotage thing is we're trying to fit things into this box in order for us to feel okay with it.
It's like Cinderella.
This
when the stepsisters are trying to like pound it on the shoe. I'll make it fit.
Yeah. Like
I've
you and I
that.
have the fairy tale right now. We're really living it, I think, for both of us. Like if you would have, grabbed me at 12 years old and been like, this is what 40 years or 30 years in the future, when you're 42 years old, this is what your life's going to be, right? You're going to be happily married to this amazingly beautiful, smart, intelligent, gorgeous brunette woman. You're going to own your home. You're going to live in the woods. You're going to have all of these things. You're going to have 4 happy kids. Like, you're going to have a dog that drives you crazy. Like, all of these things. I would have been like, oh my God, that's so amazing. I'm so happy that my life turned out so awesome. But that 12-year-old would see it very differently than it is today.
Yeah.
Because I look at our house and it doesn't look like my fairy tale house.
No, it doesn't look like my fairy tale house either.
Right.
Yeah.
The sweet 2013 minivan that we're driving doesn't look like my dream car. Right. But I'm pretty grateful for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about now. I don't know where we're at.
Well, I
don't know
think it like kind of goes how, like, where these wounds are, where these core wounds of where you have to address, or you don't have to, but you get to choose to address like where these started, these wounds, how they're playing out your life, what your expectations are of others, because expectations of others are a recipe for resentment, and, you know, which is obviously, what did they say? That's like the number one killer, is resentment of relationships. Like, you start building resentments and things just boom. And it's your expectations on how others should and shouldn't behave and act and do all of the things. So when you're like really focusing in on what wounds you have that are shaping your beliefs, how your belief system was formed, and how you are seeing the world through the way that you're carrying yourself, and you're interacting with others and expecting others to interact with you, the projections that you're putting out there instead of the self-reflections that create the patterns that you are experiencing, which keep you in these same loops. So you can look at the patterns and how to fix them. Everybody has the tools on, this is what you do. You want to achieve this, you do this, this, this. Great. Everybody knows what to do, but everybody are not doing the things because of the wounds and the programs and the beliefs that are underneath. So it's like, we're talking about those and bring those, like, these are things. And it's sometimes like the hardest thing too is sometimes these beliefs and these programs and these behaviors that you have are really embarrassing.
Oh yeah.
You're like, fuck, that's how I'm acting. That's how I've been acting. They're really hard to admit to. So like talking about them, and normally you also got to be careful who you talk to, because some people will use them against you, and maybe that's just a perception.
We recommend having a podcast,
right? just tell the whole world, just all at once. Whoever listens to you gets to say all your shit. But they're really hard, and so you have to sit in your own shit and be embarrassed, and allow yourself to be like, okay, let's curious, what's underneath this? Where did I learn this? Because on top of all that, the embarrassment isn't yours either. Somebody taught you to be embarrassed of yourself instead of like really looking and seeing where it's coming from and what you can do with it. So really being able to sit in yourself, sit with your shit, and all of that helps you navigate and utilize the tools that you have collected on how to move forward in life. That's what I think. That's what I'm working on. We'll see.
Okay, baby, let's wrap up. Let's go through this week's question. As always, you can email us those questions. You can text us those questions. You can call in those questions.
What number?
The number to call in your question is 423-521-0355. And it's down in the show notes. Go ahead and read the question this week, babe.
I'm going to do the question?
Mm-hmm. Hopefully you can read it already.
We'll see. Can. I've been working on myself for a long time now and have made so much progress. I'm a completely different person than I was when I started this journey. I need help though. I keep finding myself in toxic relationships with toxic people, whether it's friends or people I try dating, and I don't know why.
Okay. It's a good question.
It is a good question.
So repeating patterns, toxic relationships, ending up in the same place, even though you try to do it differently.
Yeah, this person is, from what I gathered, they're like, they've been working on themselves.
Yes.
And they're like, why does this shit keep happening? I'm doing the work. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah, what comes up for you?
I want you to go first. I feel like I just got done talking a lot.
That's true, yeah. And you read the question.
And I did.
So I think initially, kudos, right? The idea that you are working on yourself and you're working on healing and you're working on changing and all of those things, that's a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that I don't think gets enough credit, where we value different things in society, right? Are you successful with a job, with a career? Do you make a lot of money? Do you have a happy relation? Like, do you have all of those things that society deems important and are going to give you value and worth? And if you do or you don't, that's not what I'm talking about. But I think the idea of being committed to working on yourself is a really big deal that should be acknowledged as well. Like, you should definitely get an award for that. You should definitely be acknowledged for trying to better yourself and change and heal so that you can become a better person and all of those kind of things. That's like the real big way that we make a big shift in the world, is if we all just start working on ourselves. So kudos to you first and foremost for doing that. And then why do you keep having toxic relationships and finding relationships that repeat old patterns and old cycles? Well, I think the reason being is because it just takes a lot longer to heal than we'd like it to. Mm-hmm. Where you might recognize the pattern as happening. It's the same. I mean, we've talked about this before too, where it's like awareness is the first step. So you have awareness that you have toxic patterns that play out and they'll manifest in relationships. So you have awareness of it. And then you have to go through the process of like sitting in that awareness in order to fully understand it in a deeper way. So you have to understand not only the awareness that something is happening, but you also have to understand the roots of where that came from. And when it comes to relationships, especially when it comes to romantic relationships and when it comes to love, those things are going to be super deeply embedded in our core because they're so ingrained and formed during the time period in our life when we're directly correlated and connected to our parents for survival. So you're going to be connected to your parents or to your caregivers for your survival. So trying to unpack the roots of some of these toxic behaviors that happen in adulthood with relationships, it just takes a really long time. So give yourself more patience and more understanding. And the more work that you continue to do, the more understanding you're going to have. And it's just that process of peeling back layer after layer after layer of understanding why not only you are the way that you are, but then also starting to be able to see and make change in the like lived experience of going through those things. So you have awareness of the issue that you want to change. Then you sit with the issue to see where it comes from. And then over time, you start to catch the behaviors that are driving the issue. Because that's the other thing too, is love and relationships are going to spark emotions inside of our bodies, both good and bad. And we have to subtly pick up on when those are happening inside of our bodies, because they'll get triggered by something that, like, this is the funny thing that happens where you'll have a negative response that takes place in your body that might be triggered by a positive event on the outside. Or you might have a positive experience inside of your body, a positive emotion that gets triggered by a negative experience. So it's not always one for one. Sometimes it is. It's sometimes, ow, something happens to me. I stub my toe and I get hurt. Sometimes it's obvious, the correlation. But the majority of the time, you don't see what causes the trigger until you have done a lot of work to be able to acknowledge and recognize where it's coming from. And that process takes years. So that's the encouragement, even though it sucks, right? But the idea is the fact that you can see it and the fact that you can see that it's keeping repeating is like massive. That's a really high level self-awareness. And that is an indicator that you're doing an immense amount of work to be able to witness and see that those things are taking place. And of course, it's frustrating to not be able to change them in the moment. But things change and healing doesn't happen in the moment. It happens retrospectively. But the gap between the toxic thing happening and you having awareness of it, that window will shrink and get smaller and smaller to the point where you no longer make those decisions. So you'll stop attracting as well as being attracted to people that will create that toxic pattern because you've done so much work to now have a new, healthier pattern that you're actually living. And there's no shortcut to that. There's no, here's the real reason why, or this is the same thing. Like there's just no quick fix. There's no solution on this that is just immediate. And that sucks. But the truth of it is it's different for every single person, because every single person is so nuanced in how those things were formed, that you just have to be really loving and patient with yourself as you go through the process of trying to understand it all. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. The only thing that I would add to that is get curious about how are you with boundaries? What is your relationship with boundaries? And a lot of times when we're starting this work, or when we've been in this work for a while, we feel like we are now finally setting boundaries for ourselves, and we're setting healthy boundaries. And so why are these things happening? But a lot of times we're assessing our boundaries that we are able to set with people who are like in the outer circle. When we finally learn boundaries and we're practicing, we're like, no, I don't want to do that. Thank you for the invite. Or however, like you're just able to set boundaries with the outer circle. And so you're like, I'm great with boundaries. But a lot of times setting boundaries with people in your inner circle is where we really struggle, because we still have that belief of not being fair or hurting them or causing discomfort, like that we're not really worth these boundaries. So just get curious about how you are with boundaries. If it's something that you haven't really been able to really start to set and establish in your space yet, then that's a great place to start. And if you've been working on your boundaries, really get curious with how you are able to hold your boundaries for yourself with your inner circle. And yeah, that's just where I would go from there.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. And as always, you can send those questions to us. If you go to our website, it's energyislove.love. You can find all this information there. There's a tab up top for the podcast. You can click there and go learn about the podcast and find the phone number to call us. You can also just reach out directly there and send us these questions if you'd like. Mm-hmm. Last but not least, thank you for listening.
Yes.
Thank you for supporting the podcast. Leave us a review and rate it, and subscribe, and 5 stars and all those things too. If you enjoyed this episode. Anything else you want to say before we go, babe? You can close us out.
And close us out. If there's something you want to hear us talk about, you want us to do more than just a question, but if you have an episode of you want us to reach out. Maybe we'll do an episode on your topic
that you want us to take on and tackle on the podcast. Let us know. We'll see you guys next week.